still actually have the public hearing on the 10th, even while you are discussing modifications.
Okay, we need a second to Mr. Thomas's motion.
Second.
Okay, it's moving properly second that we would continue the first reading until the 27th, but go ahead and advertise the public hearing for February 10th. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Fincher. That takes us to agenda item number 8, first reading of proposed zoning text amendment, text 02-2014, amendment to Article 17, administration and enforcement requiring up-to-date payment of real estate taxes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this proposed text amendment would add a paragraph to the current zoning ordinance under administration and enforcement, in which if an applicant came in for a development application, be it a permit for new construction of a single-family dwelling, an E&S permit for land disturbance, rezoning, subdivision, special exception, state code allows localities to provide proof that the owner is up to date with their current real estate taxes. We've had some situations in the past where perhaps an owner was not up to date and still was allowed to go through the process. This, I think, would address what might be a loophole and allow us to make sure that an applicant for a permit within these provisions is up to date with their real estate taxes into the county and make sure everything is current with respect to that.
Okay.
This is also a first reading for you all to look at this. So this is the first time you've seen it.
Board members have questions regarding the first reading?
I do have a question.
Status.
So, if they haven't paid the taxes, they have 5 years, is that correct? I think that's a number, or 3 years, I think I've heard 3 years. And if they don't pay the taxes within 3 years, the county has the ability to put it up for auction? Now, I understand.
Yeah.
You're talking about a person that owes property on a current house or land or whatever.
On taxes.
I mean, owes taxes.
Correct. When they
Okay.
came in to apply for a permit,
Yeah.
Yes, sir. It has.
I don't know, many times there are mitigating circumstances, and I know we've talked about this tax issue for a long time, and in some cases it's come back to bite the board members, if you would, as far as with their constituents and what have you. I want everybody to pay their fair share of taxes. That's always, I pay mine. I'm quite sure that every board member pays theirs, and everybody else must pay their own fair share of the taxes. But I think also we can sometimes go overboard in what we are trying to do. And I don't know who brought this up. It may have been staff that brought this up. But if you owe taxes, or if an individual owes taxes on a piece of land or on their home, and within 3 years the county has the right to put it up for auction. Is that correct? After 3 years, it can be put up and sold. And we get our tax revenue from that. They may want to go ahead and build a house, and you're going to collect taxes on that as well. I'm just not sure why restricting someone from coming in and applying for a permit to take trees down. That's land disturbance. They want to take trees down. If you owe tax on your property, you can't do it. I just don't know that we aren't becoming too restrictive on the people as to what they can do with their land. To be honest with you, realize they deserve to pay the taxes. I understand they have an obligation to pay their taxes. I understand that completely. But the Treasury has put in place a lot of means in order to collect those taxes.
And I think
Right.
that might just be the issue. If with all of the measures that have been put in place and they still have not paid, why would you want them to build or get into a position where they still even owe more funding to the county? And I guess that's, I mean, I don't know if that's the way, if that was the idea behind it at first. Was when you got a person who already owes taxes, and, you know, with all that's been in place, they've not paid them, but yet and still they want to come in and do something else within the county that would be further indebted. And if they haven't paid taxes on what they have, they want to build another house or whatever it is that they want to do.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood and then Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I would have to respectfully disagree with my colleague, Mr. Akers. Clearly, we have processes and procedures in place for taxpayers, and we all receive our tax bills, and we're all under the same guidance and purview. Why would we want to change to allow a person to do additional things when they haven't taken care of the basic part, and that is to pay your taxes? I just respectfully disagree, and we need this amendment in place, not allowing people to continue to be indebted to the county and reap benefit. There is a price to be paid. All of us pay for services that are provided by the county. And we can't make loopholes and exceptions for people. That's not right. It's not fair.
Well, Mr. Thomas and then Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I just mentioned to Mr. Black while we were discussing this, if I had not paid my taxes in December, and yet I went to Mr. Fincham for a permit to put a deck on the back of my house, based on this, I would not be allowed to do it. So I think that's the extreme case of where we are and what would happen here, but I understand the intent. And maybe the intent could be modified a little to say that after, because we only have 3 years. So maybe I didn't pay my taxes in December. I get a year to catch up on my taxes before I build something.
Mr. Chairman.
Or something of that nature.
Mr.
You know,
Black, I hear what
Miss-
you're saying, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Black?
I guess for me, it's, and I was the one who was pushing this thing. And we just went up on taxes 11 cents. We just did an 11-cent real estate tax to pay for, to pay, well, the voters, whoever, the taxes went up 11 cents. But the point is this. The point is, how can we go back to raise taxes when we're not enforcing the people that already owe us the taxes? I have a hard time going back and saying, hey, we need to go back for a 2-cent tax increase when someone is coming to the county who owes us, because there was a business a few years ago that owed us, that we granted a permit to, that they owed us $8,000, and we gave them a permit. And we said it was okay. And that's not okay. To me, that is not okay. If they owe the county money, we shouldn't be giving them favors until they pay their taxes.
You want to make a commercial? Commercial and not residential?
This still won't solve that problem.
Because the reality is, if we go through this list of all the people who didn't pay their taxes that you asked before, the top 20 or 30 were businesses that are out of business. They're never going to ask for anything because they're out of business. So the purpose is not going to be satisfied. I mean, I understand all that. I think the residential part of this is going to be an issue to citizens.
Mr. Sealy?
You know, during Mr. Cully's first budget session with us, we all were shown something that was interesting. There's 1-year, 2-year, and 3-year delinquent taxes. Some people purposely stay 2 years behind in taxes because they can keep the money longer, they know nothing will happen. There's a whole segment of folks who think that's okay. If they want to build something else and they want to stay 2 years behind in their taxes, you know, we learned that we don't see, if you increase taxes last year, you won't see the full effect of the tax increase for 3 years because people purposely stay behind. So if you allow them, if you allow those folks to continue to live the way they want and not pay the taxes that everybody else is paying up front, I don't think that's right. And I think we've learned that through the budgeting process. And I do agree that you should be up to date and current when you come apply for any permit in the county. My thoughts.
So we have to decide, do we want to continue the first reading, or do we want to go to public hearing? And just like anything else, whenever we decide on a policy, we help some people, we hurt some people. And sometimes we hurt people we don't want to hurt, but that's the only way to generate the funds that we're talking about. Our idea is to try to get people to pay their taxes, because we know if we could get 100% of the people to pay their taxes, we'd be far better off financially as a county. And what we have to decide is, is this going to be more beneficial to that end? Are we going to hurt more people by doing this? Or are we going to generate more revenue or get people to do what we've asked them to do in the first place? And I think that's the issue.
Mr. Chairman, just have one comment, then I'm through with it. Looking at my district over the last 4 years, I have seen cutoff notices for folks for their septic tank because they were 2 months behind and owed $68. Lady, just let me finish. Yeah. But I'm saying that's in our policy, because if you're behind 60 days, no matter what the cost, you're cut off. Now, here we are, again, I just can't believe that we would say it's okay for people to pay or stay 2 years behind in your taxes, and as long as you pay, the next year you can build or do what you want on property. What is the message that we're sending to people when we're willing to go out and cut people's water off for $50 for the cost they're behind? What are we saying here as a board again? I don't think this is the message that we want to send. That it's okay to be behind as long as you're less than 3 years. We don't generate any revenue. You can go on and do what you please. Carry on with your life. You can build your deck. You can do whatever you wish. But some of our less fortunate folks who have found themselves in dire straits over $50 or $75, we've cut their water off. We've given them an additional bill. Come on, let's get real here. Let's get real. This is not right to say that we just let them go on. I don't care who it is. It's not fair. Level the playing field. Treat everyone the same. And the ordinance is the same. If you're behind, catch up. You can do as you please based on the county ordinance. If not, then you suffer the consequences. We don't give permits if you're not going to be up to date in this county.
Are we going to continue the first reading, go to public hearing?
I think
A motion is in order.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to I'd make a motion to go to public hearing, please, on this text amendment, which is 02-2014.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and properly seconded that we go to public hearing on the text amendment 0214, administration and enforcement requiring up-to-date payment of real estate taxes. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Division of the House, Mrs. Thomas, how do you vote? Nay. Mr. Black?
Aye.
Mr. Underwood?
Aye.
Mr. Akers?
Nay.
Mr. I can't never remember your name. Mr. Sealy?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
What your name tag next time?
So we will go to public hearing for text amendment 02-2014 as presented. That takes us to agenda item number 9, first reading of proposed amendment of chapter 103, section 103-43-1 of the Code of Carlisle, filing of personal property returns.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm going to try to introduce this topic and then turn it over to Mrs. Carter to answer the hard questions.
Okay.
This agenda item is a continuation of the previous discussion regarding the penalty for not notifying the Commissioner's office when you acquire new personal property, not notifying the Commissioner's office within 60 days as the ordinance requires. And this is directly related to proration, which began in the county January 1st, 2013. Under the current proration ordinance, the penalty for not filing within the 60 days is 10% of the amount of the prorated tax due. Mr. Black had received complaints from citizens who felt like they weren't aware of the penalty, the need to file, and there was some discussion about stepping up our efforts to notify those citizens, but the majority of the board ultimately decided that that wasn't necessary. The discussion at that point turned to amending the ordinance to try to place a cap on the amount of the penalty. So when we researched the possible ordinance amendment, we discovered that the current late penalty for the proration ordinance is not the same as what I would call the general personal property ordinance, which, as you know, requires citizens to file an itemized list of personal property with the Commissioner's office by February 1st each year. So the penalty for the proration ordinance is 10% of the prorated value, and the penalty for the general personal property ordinance is the sum of the greater of $10 or 10% of the assessable tax. So the two penalties do not match. And in researching it further, we consulted with the county attorney, who indicated that that is a problem, that the penalty should be uniform in that same tax class. So this presents a bit of a dilemma. If we make the proration filing penalty tax match the personal property filing tax, we could not accomplish the board's goal of putting a cap on the proration penalty. On the other hand, if we change both penalties to a fixed amount, we would see our revenue from the general personal property tax February 1st deadline decline probably dramatically. I don't have the number, but you would see a significant decline, I would think, in the revenue. So the Commissioner's suggestion is that we simply eliminate the penalty on the proration ordinance, the 60-day requirement. Her office would be able to pick up the personal property through the DMV records, and those that are not picked up, such as boats and other non-licensed personal property, she could back bill those individuals from the annual billing, the February, when it's picked up on the February 1st filing. That change would, we bill rather, not necessarily generate, but we bill about $65,000 in penalties each year on the proration penalty, so you would lose that. Under this scenario, the penalty would remain the same for the February 1st filing for the general personal property filing, but you would eliminate the concern about the proration penalty, and the county attorney has indicated that you can't eliminate a penalty, and there would be no concern about having two separate penalties as we do now. It would resolve that issue. So you have in front of you a text or an ordinance amendment that would put in place the recommendation made by Mrs. Carter. If you feel that is a solution, it would need to be made retroactive to January 1st of this year to ensure a smooth personal property assessing season. Another alternative that you could do is to simply make the penalty for the proration ordinance the same as the general ordinance. In other words, the greater of $10 or 10%. That obviously would not put the cap in place that you talked about before, But if you notified people with a postcard, as was talked about previously, that way, there should be no anybody with the legitimate ability to claim that they weren't aware of the need to do that. That concludes my introduction, Mr. Chairman, and would turn it over to Ms. Carter for any questions.
Okay. Ms. Carter, did you want to add to? No, sir. Okay. All right. Okay. Mr. Cully wants to add.
Just one thing for clarity. By eliminating this, you're not just eliminating the fee for prorated, you're eliminating the requirement to file.
Right.
So, and that wasn't real clear because Mr. Emerson pointed that out. So I just want to make sure you understood it. You're just eliminating that requirement for a prorated vehicle. You don't have to file. They'll pick it up in their normal manner. But you would still need to, February 1st would still be just like normal, and the penalties would be just like they currently are today.
You would not have to file within 60 days.
Right. You would not have to file on a prorated vehicle. We would pick it up, and you'd have to pay tax on it. The only thing, it would eliminate the issue with the filing penalty altogether, because you would no longer be filing.
So the person who purchased the vehicle but did not know that they had to come in and pay the taxes would not get that penalty that they now get.
They would owe their taxes, and they would owe their prorated taxes, and then by February 1st the following year, they would have to file with all their other vehicles or other personal property. But it basically just eliminates the filing requirement for prorated vehicles. And by eliminating the filing requirement, you thereby eliminate this whole penalty issue.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask to restate that to make sure I understand what we're saying? So I buy a car February 2nd. Mrs. Carter gets some information from DMV that says I registered my car. She then sends me a postcard. She doesn't do anything. She knows what my tax rate will be. And she'll send me something in June for my tax bill. Otherwise, you don't know anything about my cars unless I file it on February 1st, right?
We're still going to bill for it. We won't wait until June to send you a bill.
So how, you're going to bill me from February January to February?
Right. Actually, it'll be prorated on the book.
Right.
If you did it actually February the 2nd.
So.
But you won't get a penalty. That's the issue. That was the issue.
That's the issue.
Yeah, people didn't complain about the tax. They complained about the penalty because they said they didn't know. Now we're taking away the penalty, if I'm correct.
You're correct. We would still retain the same tax structure on the vehicle that we currently have done since we adopted proration.
Right.
But the filing requirement, which is I on this ordinance that's on the table, where you must file within 60 days or you have this penalty of 10%, would go away. We're still going to tax you at base. You buy a car in July, you're going to get a prorated tax bill sometime and have to pay your taxes on owning that car for those extra months. It's just you don't have to make any filing with the commissioner. We'll get it from DMV. You'll file on it the next year, February 1st, like normal. So it really won't affect our tax revenue for proration.
But it seems like now, if I don't, because I went in there in December, but if I don't file my vehicle registrations or personal property February 1st, I get a 10% penalty.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, it's not different. Money's money. So the reality is, now we're going to put extra work in the commissioner's office to send this out. This is no extra work for you?
No, sir. We prorate all the time. We're prorating
Because
all
we gave
through
you
the
extra
year.
person to do that.
What
Yes.
I was suggesting was an alternative to eliminating
To eliminate the penalty.
That's all we're doing.
There'll never be another penalty.
There will be a penalty if you do not file by February 1. There will not be a penalty on the prorated items only.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Okay.
Well, Mr. Seeley had one, and then you.
Okay.
Mrs. Carter, I buy a car April 1. You pick it up from DMV on the registration. I get a tax bill in June from April to June, when you send out the next tax bills.
Yeah, that one would actually be broken in two halves. Yes, sir.
It'd be broken in, oh, because it's 2 months prior.
No.
Okay, now I know why I'm stuck.
All right, we do give the taxpayers 2 payments up to the month of August. After August, we only send out 1 bill. But of course, for the prorated item, believe me, the process is not easy.
Would I get a bill in June for a car I bought in April?
Yes, sir.
And then I would get another bill,
For December 5. We split our bills in
well, right,
half.
but I would only pay 2 months in June and then 6 months in December.
Absolutely.
Okay, but, so is, for cars, DMV reports that rather than them paying a penalty because they wouldn't have come in to see you, they would just get a bill, and that's why I used this, because it would be right at 60 days. Actually, you have to go back to March to be more like 60 days out, because you do the bills in April,
We do the bills in
or
April.
for May payment. So, okay, what about boats and RVs?
Some of those will be slow for us to pick up without the filing in the 60 days. I have to admit that.
Okay.
We're not going to pick up everything, but we will pick it up on your February 1 or when Game and Inland files another annual report with us, and it will be picked up. And it will be back billed at that time.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so do we want to go to public hearing?
All right, now, one thing I do want you to understand, I need this to be retroactive back to January 1, or we're really going to mess with things. Okay? And then you have to know the notifications are out there now for the 60-day filing. I can't take them back. So there will be a little education that will have to be done, but I'm sure if they don't have a penalty, there's not going to be a problem.
Yeah. What we were trying to do was eliminate the
taxpayer.
penalty. That was
That's
the
it. Just-
big issue, and we've
We're
done.
not eliminating the tax.
Right. We
We're
just eliminating
eliminating
the
the prorated penalty only.
Okay. All right, so we need to go to public hearing?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, we have to do public hearing.
Yeah, go to.
Anything with tax you do.
Do y'all want to adopt it as, I mean, if you're in agreement about this, you could adopt it as an emergency ordinance tonight.
Thank
So
you.
Ms. Carter could get going.
Okay.
And
Thank
then
you.
you go through the process and advertise and do the regular adoption.
We're already assessing.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adopt as an emergency ordinance?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second that we adopt this as an emergency ordinance as presented. All in favor, let it be known by. Discussion.
Just for clarity,
Okay.
emergency ordinances are good for 30 days?
60 is.
60? So we have to come back and finish this ordinance within 60 days, just to make sure. we
Or
don't
you're
miss it.
coming to work for me.
No problem.
Right, and if,
Okay, I'll show up tomorrow.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to informational calendar items. Mr. Cully?
You owe us.
Remember that this is a 4-day weekend. County will be closed on Friday and Monday. So if you're looking for folks, we probably won't be there. Our next board meeting, we came out of the 212 to agree to a school board budget work session. And I think we're going to set that, if it's an agreement, at 4:30 on the 27th. It's good for the school board. They approved that last night. I'm just waiting for us to set what time. If we could do it at 5, but that just sort of gets, it's hard to get a lot done in that 1 hour. So we had recommended 4:30 on the 27th, so y'all would need to recess this meeting to 4:30 on the 27th for a meeting with the school board. VML VACO Legislative Day is Thursday the 5th. If anybody's planning on attending that, please let Pam know so she can get the registration done. Mr. Underwood has a meeting on the 20th at Visitor Center, and then there were some other meetings added. I have to go back in my notes to find for other ones.
Mr. Underwood and I were discussing this meeting. I think he was going to cancel it. Or
Mr.
thinking about
Underwood,
canceling.
do you want to cancel your meeting?
You know, in light of everything that's taken place, I think I'd like to cancel that meeting. Pam, can we do that, or is
We
it
can
too
run
late?
ahead.
We've
Maybe.
advertised, so.
If you want, I'll show up there. That is the matter for non-district.
Then let's go on with it, if you want to show up. It won't be long.
No, I'm going to do one on the 27th.
Too late to get an
Okay,
cancellation
we'll
in
leave,
the local
leave it
paper.
like it is.
Okay. The only other thing I would say, in light of the canceling of your meeting, Mr. Underwood, it seems as though there are some real concerns about this issue. And would it be, I guess, proper to send a message that maybe this is just not what we feel is best at this time? I mean, we could let them know, and they would not have to continue to keep putting effort into something that, probably is not going to happen. So I guess my question to you, Mr. Underwood, is your district. Would you like to send a message to this group that this is just not something that the board feels they can entertain at this time?
Mr. Chairman, if I just make a comment, all along through this process, my concern is that I like for processes to run their course, and that whether the six of us agree or disagree, folks have a right to come out and present and be heard, whether we disagree. And I like to be real and make sure I follow the same process, whether I agree or not. I think that's what makes us a great nation, is the fact that the voice of the people carries our vote, but people still have a right to agree and disagree. So I think we have to still allow that process and let it be said that the people's voice has been heard. And that's how I'd like to continue. That's my contention all the time, and I still think that's how it should be.
Okay.
We haven't closing board comments?
Well, just one other thing first. We have a solid waste amendment that supposed to be in our next meeting, is that right? Do we need to continue with that, or?
He wants a process to go.
Okay.
And I believe, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Chairman, that the applicant was supposed to contact Mr. Fincham and was going to delay that?
Okay, and I wasn't aware of that.
We've already held a public hearing on the solid waste management
Right.
amendment plan. We just deferred any decision on it till after Mr. Underwood was able to have his community meetings. And so that is scheduled for the 27th, which would follow the two community meetings that you've had. So that's when we put it back on the agenda. If the board doesn't want it on the agenda, then that would certainly be something you could do. But that was our plan from when you held the public hearing and said, wait till the community meetings before we brought that back.
My opinion is I don't think it needs to be on the agenda for the 27th.
And that's my thing. I mean, if we pretty much have decided the direction that we're going, then I don't see any point in bringing the solid waste amendment back on the 27th. So,
But
But the applicant was saying.
I can say to Mr. Underwood right now, really and truly, I know that some people don't believe it, but I really haven't gone into a public hearing with my mind solidly made up in the 28 years I've been on this board. But I'm going into this public hearing with my mind made up. It is not an issue that I'm going to support, to be quite honest with you. And it's just.
and that's my
We've
reason
already
for
had that public
saying,
hearing.
for making the statement that I made.
I'm done with the process.
Right.
not gonna do
But,
it.
if we know now, if the majority of this board has decided that that is not the direction that we want to go, then I don't know that we need this on the agenda.
Well,
We could vote that down tonight.
yeah,
Mr.
Excuse me, sir, I mean, as far as process goes, the next step in the legal process would be to take a vote on the solid waste amendment ordinance, or the ordinance. The
Okay,
amendment
man,
to
it's
the
not
ordinance.
on- it's not on the
But when
agenda.
you do it is up to you, but you need to have the vote
I'm saying go ahead and vote
sometime.
over it.
But there's
But
no
it's-
further public hearing
Get it
or
over with.
public discussion necessary.
Can we do that
legally.
with it not being on the agenda?
Well, the way your procedures normally work, you would want to amend the agenda to put it on it, but you could do that. I mean, you could, that's a decision for the majority of the board to make.
So what I hear you saying, Mr. Emerson, is that we can call for a vote on the solid waste, whether we want it on the agenda at this point.
I think you could do that if you wanted to do that.
Okay,
Yes.
That's what the majority of the board is saying, that we want to have a vote on that now without being out of order.
Then
So
I-
is that, can we procedurally do what?
Yes, sir, I would just make I would have someone make a motion first to amend the agenda to put that question on it,
Okay.
and then call that question.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, I will at this time entertain a motion to amend the agenda to put the solid waste amendment discussion on the agenda so that we can vote it up or vote it down, whichever way we choose. For right now. We can't do it without it being on the agenda, and so we need to amend the agenda to put it on there.
I'm lost.
We need to amend the agenda right now to put,
Are we voting on, we're not voting at all on the actual text amendments, we're just voting whether it's going to be on the agenda?
we're going to right now, if the board so chooses, we're going to amend the agenda to put the solid waste amendment, to talk about the solid waste amendment, to, our
Right now.
purpose is to, to
Yeah.
vote it down if this is what the majority
Okay.
wants.
I got you.
But we can't do that because it's not on the agenda. So,
And the only thing I'd add to that, we're not talking zoning text amendment, we're talking the solid waste management plan, which you held a public hearing on in December, on December 2nd. And that action was deferred until Mr. Underwood was able to have some community meetings. As far as zoning text amendments, that hadn't moved to the board yet, so that's not something that you could take action on yet.
But the solid waste management plan is what allows those zoning text amendments to move forward.
Right, so that is correct.
So we have an open action item of either accepting or denying the solid waste management plan.
That is correct.
That's what you'd like to have on the agenda right at this instant. Is that my understanding, Mr. Chairman?
yes, sir.
And then if we vote on that, following that amendment, the solid waste management plan would be defeated, and
And then
even
we
if the
would-
text amendments, well, the text amendments could eventually come to the board, and they would have no relevance.
That's correct.
Right. So I need a motion to amend the agenda so that the solid waste management plan can be discussed.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and properly second that we amend the agenda and add the solid waste management plan. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now we can make a motion to deal with the solid waste management plan, vote it down or vote it up, or take it off the agenda, I guess is what we need to do.
No, we just put it on the agenda.
I mean, for the 27th.
Mr. Chairman?
No,
It's on the agenda.
It's on the agenda right now.
For the, right, but what we are doing is deciding to not talk,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
I would make a motion to deny or not carry through with the text amendment on the solid waste plan. That was
solid waste management plan.
solid waste management plan as presented by staff.
No, it
No,
is,
just not approve. If
you would
I
vote to
understand
not
you
approve the
correctly,
solid waste management plan as
Excuse
presented.
me,
Mr. Emerson, you've done a good job of explaining my motion.
If I understand correctly what you're asking, the way I would phrase it is that you're making a motion to not approve the proposed solid waste management plan amendment.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what my motion says.
Okay,
I'm
is
going
there
to
a
second his motion.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we deny the solid waste management plan as presented. The solid waste plan amendment. Are there questions, discussion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, that takes us to closing board comments. Mr. Thomas, do you have closing
comment.
words? Mr. Black,
No comment, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Underwood,
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers,
No comments.
and Mr. Seal.
I have no comments.
And I have none as well. Okay, we need to recess.
I make a motion recess to 4:30 on the 27th of January, here at the Community Services Building, EOC room.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded, we recess to the 27th at 4:30. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried.